Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Norvina Volume 1 palette, which retails for $60 US, £68 and 120 Australian dollars. This look is inspired by Norvina's Volume 3 campaign shoot, and my socials are on screen as always. Let's get into it. The palette contains 25 shades, 8 shimmers and 17 of the shadows are pressed pigments. The colour scheme is largely purple, with Volume 2 being a bit more blue based and more of a rainbow palette, and Volume 3 being a warm toned palette with hints of green, which would be perfect as an autumn palette. I haven't tried an Anastasia Beverly Hills palette since Modern Renaissance came out, so I was pleasantly surprised with the swatches, and I found that the shadows were extremely buttery, yet there wasn't much fallout. First I'm dipping into C5 and buffing that in my crease with a fluffy brush and winging it out relatively far. I did have a bit of trouble using this palette the first time because the shadows are so pigmented, and I found that they went patchy very quickly if you don't use a tacky base and build up the colour slowly. And then I'm mixing A5 and D3 together and buffing that above the previous shade. Next, I'm adding E4 using a flat, fluffy brush. I was instantly drawn to the shade and I really loved how it blended out. I think this shade and E1 are my two favourites in the palette. Then I'm using the same brush and I'm just lightening the blend using E2, which is a lighter orange. Using the Revolution concealer, I'm cutting half a crease and adding E1 in the centre of the lid and then C2 in the inner portion of the cut crease. I also decided to add some yellow to the blend to really mimic Norvina's look, and I found this yellow was actually pretty tricky to blend, as I found it blended away a lot, but after packing the shadow on and blending very little, I found it worked really well. Here I used the same shadows that we used in the crease to buff out the lid. I drifted the same shadows from the crease to the outer part of the lower lash line, and since the palette doesn't have any greens and I really fancied having a pop of colour, I decided to dip into the Be Perfect Cosmetics Carnival Pro palette and used the Hype and Ecstasy to smoke out the inner portion of the lower lash line. I wanted a bit more sparkle, so I added a bit of extra glitter using the Peaches pigment in Hollywood just over the shimmers on the lid, and added some rhinestones in my inner corner and underneath my eye as well as around my brow. Finally, for a bit more glitter, I'm packing on some more pigments in Rattlesnake and Snakebite and using the Huda Beauty lashes in Hoodie. Overall, I really loved working with this palette. I've since done a few more looks using the purple shades and I found them super lovely to blend. The palette is definitely a palette which you need to find what technique works for you, and I found using a very tacky base and a small amount of shadow on the brush to build the colour up ensured the shadows didn't go patchy. I don't know if I would consider this very beginner friendly, but it's definitely a palette which I will continue to use. The downside to this palette is definitely the price point. Being $112 is very pricey for a palette, and whilst I think it's definitely worth it, personally I don't think I would be able to buy the whole collection. I hope you enjoyed this review and tutorial using the Norvina Volume 1 Pro palette. Thank you so much for watching.